I can't lose you.
You won't. Just trust me.
I do.
Then stay.
The market analysis shows we need to adapt.
I agree, but what are the risks?
We must consider long-term stability. We need to move forward with this. I agree, but the risks are high. We must consider all angles. Agreed.
Oh, my dear, I've missed you so much.
I missed you too. It's so good
The
to be
night
home.
she left the
Welcome
village,
back.
the moon followed her like it knew her secret. Chalugo stood at the edge of the dusty road with a small bag in her hand and a heart full of questions. People said the city swallows dreamers, but Chalugo believed her dream was already waiting there. Somewhere beyond the noise and tall buildings was her Udogwu, the man whose name alone gave her courage. She had heard stories about him for years, stories of power, wealth, and a past tied to hers in ways she didn't yet understand. What she didn't know was that the city had its own plans for her. Chalugo was not running away. She was running toward something. Toward answers. Toward love. Toward the life she felt was stolen from her before she even had a choice. The village whispered when she passed, some with pity, others with jealousy. A young woman leaving home alone was never a small thing. But Chalugo's mind was fixed. She remembered her mother's warning, her father's silence, and the name Udogwu spoken only in half-sentences. That name became her compass. When the bus finally arrived in the city, the air felt heavier, louder, and faster. Everything moved like it was late for something. Chalugo clutched her bag tighter, reminding herself why she came. The city lights were beautiful, but they did not feel welcoming. Every face looked busy, every step uncertain. Still, she told herself that Udogwu was here. If he could rise in this city, then she could find him. Days passed, and the city tested her patience. Chalugo moved from street to street, job to job, story to story. Some doors opened only to close again. Some smiles hid sharp intentions. She began to realize that finding Udogwu was not just about knowing where to look, but who to trust. The name that once gave her strength now attracted trouble. People reacted differently when she mentioned it. Fear, respect, curiosity, but never answers. At night, Chalugo lay awake replaying memories that didn't fully belong to her. Dreams came with faces she couldn't place and voices calling her name. She started to wonder if Udogwu wanted to be found at all. Was he the hero she imagined, or a man hiding from his past? And what part of that past involved her? Then one evening, everything changed. A stranger said her name in a crowded place where no one should have known it. The way he looked at her made her heart race, not with love, but with warning. He mentioned Udogwu not as a story, but as a man watching, waiting. Chalugo felt the ground shift beneath her. The city was no longer just a place of opportunity, it was a place of secrets. As she followed the stranger into the night, one thought echoed in her mind. Finding Udogwu might cost her more than she ever imagined, and she was already too deep to turn back.
Chalugo followed the stranger without asking questions, her feet moving before her mind could catch up. The city street felt different at night, quieter but more dangerous. The lights flickered above them as they walked, and every shadow seemed to stretch toward her. The man did not look back, yet he spoke as if he could feel her fear. He told her the city listens, that walls have ears, and that some names are not meant to be called out loud. When he said Udogwu again, slower this time, Chalugo felt a cold weight settle in her chest. They stopped near an old building that looked forgotten by time. The stranger finally turned, his eyes sharp but tired, like someone who had seen too much. He asked her why she was looking for Udogwu, and for the first time since she arrived in the city, Chalugo didn't know what to say. Was she looking for love, truth, or a man who owed her family something they never spoke about? She answered simply, that she needed to see him. The man laughed softly, not in mockery but in disbelief. He told her many people had tried, and not all of them were still breathing easy lives. As he spoke, Chalugo learned that Udogwu was not just a successful man in the city. He was powerful, protected, and surrounded by loyalty and fear. People worked for him without ever meeting him. Others disappeared after crossing his path. The stranger said Udogwu controlled more than businesses. He controlled stories. That was why no one in the village ever spoke clearly about him. Silence was safer than truth. Chalugo's memories began to make sense in painful pieces. Her father's sudden illness after a city visit. Her mother's tears whenever Udogwu's name slipped out. The gifts that arrived without explanation, then stopped just as suddenly. Chalugo realized her journey was never meant to be simple. She was not just searching for a man, she was walking into a past that had been buried on purpose. The stranger warned her to leave the city while she still could. He said women like her don't survive long once questions start attracting attention. Chalugo thanked him, but inside, something had already changed. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled her. If Udogwu had shaped her life from a distance, then she deserved to stand before him and hear the truth with her own ears. As days passed, Chalugo noticed she was being watched. Faces lingered too long. Footsteps echoed behind her and disappeared when she turned. Even the places she stayed began to feel unsafe. Yet, clues kept finding her. A name whispered at a bus stop, a symbol scratched on a wall, a warning slipped into casual conversation. The city was guiding her deeper, whether she wanted it or not. One night, a message was left where only she would notice it. No signature. Just a place and a time. Chalugo stared at it for a long moment, her heart pounding. She knew this could be a trap or the doorway she had been searching for. As she folded the paper and hid it close to her skin, one truth became clear. Udogwu knew she was in the city now, and the game had already begun. The place written on the paper was not far, yet every step toward it felt heavy. Chalugo spent the day moving carefully through the city, trying not to draw attention, but her mind was louder than the streets. She wondered who had left the message and how they knew where to find her. The stranger's warning echoed in her head, but curiosity pushed her forward. By evening, she stood across the road from the location, a quiet lounge tucked between taller buildings, the kind of place people passed without noticing. Inside, the air smelled of old music and hidden conversations. Chalugo chose a seat where she could see the door. She reminded herself to stay calm, even as her heart raced. Around her, people laughed softly, pretending life was simple. She wondered how many of them were also living double stories. A few minutes passed before a woman approached her table. She was well-dressed, confident, and looked like she belonged to the city in ways Chalugo did not yet understand. The woman called her name without asking for confirmation. Chalugo felt her stomach tighten. The woman introduced herself only as someone who keeps things balanced. She spoke carefully, choosing her words like stepping on fragile ground. She said Udogwu did not like surprises, especially from the past. Chalugo asked what part of the past scared him so much. The woman smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. She said some bonds are not broken by distance, only delayed. Through their conversation, Chalugo learned that Udogwu had built his life in the city by cutting off anything that reminded him of where he came from. The village, the promises, the people he left behind, all of it became a threat to his present power. Anyone who carried those memories carried danger. Chalugo realized that her presence alone was already shaking carefully built walls. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Udogwu sat in silence, listening to reports. He did not ask many questions. He already knew Chalugo had arrived long before she stepped off the bus. Her name had reached him like a ghost knocking on a locked door. He remembered her as a child, standing behind her mother's wrapper, watching him with innocent eyes. That memory was the one thing he never managed to bury. Back in the lounge, the woman warned Chalugo that people around Udogwu would try to control her story before she could tell it herself. They would offer help, money, comfort, anything to keep her quiet. Others would see her as leverage. Chalugo felt anger rise slowly. She had come searching for truth, not favors. The woman leaned closer and whispered that the city rewards silence but punishes stubborn hearts. Over the next few days, Chalugo became caught between offers and threats. One man promised to help her meet Udogwu if she agreed to certain conditions. Another warned her that asking too many questions could make her disappear from the city without noise. Each encounter pulled her deeper into the conflict, forcing her to grow sharper, stronger, and more careful. At night, Chalugo stood by her window, staring at the city lights. She felt closer to Udogwu than ever, yet further from peace. She didn't know who was ally or enemy anymore. One thing was certain, every move she made was being watched. And as unseen forces closed in from different sides, Chalugo understood that the truth she was chasing might change not only her life, but everyone connected to the name Udogwu. By the time the city lights began to feel familiar, Chalugo knew she was standing on dangerous ground. Every day brought new information, but none of it felt safe to hold for too long. People spoke to her in half-truths, always checking their surroundings before mentioning Udogwu's name. Even when she stayed silent, it felt like the city was speaking to her through signs she could no longer ignore. A missed call from an unknown number. A note slipped under her door. A warning disguised as kindness. The closer she got, the more isolated she became. Friends she thought she could trust started creating distance. Doors that once opened easily now required permission. Chalugo realized this was how power worked in the city, quietly, patiently, until you were surrounded without knowing when it happened. Still, she refused to leave. Something inside her told her that turning back now would be worse than facing whatever waited ahead. One evening, she was told the meeting she had been waiting for was finally possible. Not a face-to-face yet, but close enough to feel real. The message came with strict instructions. Come alone, say little, observe everything. Chalugo's hands trembled slightly as she prepared. This was no longer just about finding her Udogwu. It was about understanding the truth that had shaped her life without her consent. Elsewhere, Udogwu felt the pressure tightening. His circle sensed the shift, even if they didn't fully understand it. Chalugo's presence had stirred old loyalties and broken silences. People who once feared him now whispered questions. He remembered the promise he made years ago, a promise he believed time had erased. Seeing her again meant facing choices he had avoided for too long. Yet power had taught him one thing: emotions were liabilities. The night of the meeting, the air felt thick. Chalugo arrived early, her heart beating loudly in her ears. She noticed the exits, the faces, the quiet tension hanging in the room. Someone was watching her, she could feel it. Every sound made her alert. When a figure finally stepped into view, not fully revealed, Chalugo knew she was closer than ever. She didn't see Udogwu's face, but she felt his presence like a shadow stretching across the room. Words were exchanged carefully. Questions were answered with more questions. Chalugo sensed fear beneath the control, not in herself but in the people managing the meeting. That alone told her how powerful the truth might be. She mentioned the village. The room shifted. She mentioned her family. Silence followed. Then a voice said her name, slowly, with familiarity that made her chest tighten. At that moment, Chalugo understood that the city was holding its breath. Whatever came next would change everything. But before she could speak again, the meeting was abruptly cut short. A warning was whispered. Plans were rearranged. Eyes avoided hers. As she stepped back into the night, Chalugo felt it clearly, the calm before something heavy. She walked away knowing she was no longer just searching for answers. She had become the answer others were afraid of. And somewhere in the city, Udogwu was preparing for a confrontation neither of them could escape. Chalugo barely made it back to her room before the weight of the night crashed over her. The voice that had called her name kept replaying in her head. It wasn't just familiar, it sounded regretful, almost protective. That confused her more than fear ever could. She had expected power, arrogance, distance, not hesitation. As she sat on the edge of her bed, she realized the meeting wasn't ended to protect Udogwu. It was ended to protect her. The next morning the city felt different again. Too quiet. Too polite. The street vendor who usually greeted her avoided her eyes. A neighbor who once offered small talk closed her door quickly. Chalugo understood then that something had shifted overnight. Her presence was no longer a secret moving in the shadows. It was now a problem people were being warned about. Later that day she received another message, but this one did not ask. It instructed. The sender claimed to know the truth about her birth, her family, and why Udogwu had really left the village. Chalugo's hands shook as she read it. The message ended with a sentence that cut deeper than anything she had heard so far. You are not looking for him. He has been looking for you since you arrived. As Chalugo tried to process this, another layer of the conflict revealed itself. She learned that Udogwu was not acting alone. His rise in the city was tied to people far more dangerous than rumors suggested. These people saw Chalugo not as a woman searching for answers, but as a risk to carefully hidden deals. To them, her connection to the past was a loose thread that could unravel everything. At the same time, Udogwu was facing pressure from within his own circle. Some wanted Chalugo removed from the city quietly. Others believed confronting her directly was the only way to control the situation. Trust was thinning. Loyalty was being tested. Udogwu found himself trapped between the man he had become and the life he abandoned. For the first time in years he felt powerless. Chalugo, unaware of the full storm gathering, decided to stop reacting and start choosing. She followed the trail of information back to someone from her village, a woman she remembered as a child, now living on the edge of the city. When they finally met, the woman broke down. She confessed that Chalugo's journey had been predicted long ago, that her birth was tied to an agreement made and broken, that Udogwu's success came at a cost that was never meant to fall on Chalugo, but did anyway. Before she could explain more, they were interrupted. A car slowed nearby. Voices called out. The woman's fear was instant and raw. She pushed Chalugo away, telling her to run, to hide, to stop digging before it was too late. Chalugo ran, her heart pounding, realizing she was now in real danger. As night fell, Chalugo stood alone under the city lights once more, knowing there was no safe place left. She now carried a truth powerful enough to threaten empires, but still incomplete. Udogwu wanted to protect her. Others wanted to silence her. And somewhere between love, guilt, and fear, the final confrontation was drawing closer than either of them was ready for. The final meeting happened where Chalugo least expected it, not in a dark room or hidden building, but in an open space where lies could no longer hide easily. The message came simply, "Come alone. This ends tonight." By then, Chalugo was tired of running, tired of guessing, tired of being afraid of a truth that already owned her life. She went, not as a confused village girl, but as a woman ready to face whatever her story truly was. When she saw Udogwu clearly for the first time, the power around his name suddenly felt small. He was not the untouchable figure the city described, but a man carrying too many regrets. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence held years of avoidance, guilt, and unanswered questions. When he finally spoke her name, there was no fear in it, only acceptance. Udogwu told her everything. He spoke of a promise made to protect her mother, a promise that tied him to people who helped him rise but owned pieces of his freedom. He admitted leaving the village was never about ambition alone, but about keeping danger away from Chalugo and her family. The gifts, the silence, the distance, all were his way of watching from afar. Chalugo listened, tears steady but controlled. The truth hurt, but it finally made sense. At the same time, those who wanted Chalugo silenced arrived, believing the moment was still theirs to control. But the city had shifted. Allies revealed themselves. Evidence Chalugo had unknowingly gathered came forward. The secrets meant to bury her became the very things that exposed the network holding Udogwu and others hostage. Power changed hands quickly when truth stood in the open. The conflict ended without chaos, but not without cost. Udogwu lost the empire he built, but gained something he never thought he would face again: freedom. Chalugo finally got the answer she came for. The city, once a maze of fear, loosened its grip on her. Just when it seemed over, when Chalugo prepared to return home with peace in her heart, the final twist revealed itself. A woman stepped forward, someone who had stayed quiet through everything. She revealed that Chalugo's journey was never just about Udogwu. The agreement broken years ago involved more than one child. Chalugo was not the only one affected by the past. As Chalugo walked away under the city lights for the last time, she understood the truth fully now. Her story was not finished. It had only uncovered a deeper one. And somewhere beyond the noise of the city and the silence of the village, another chapter was already waiting to be told. Chalugo did not rush to leave the city after everything settled. For the first time since she arrived, she allowed herself to breathe and observe without fear. The noise no longer felt threatening, and the tall buildings no longer seemed like traps. They were just structures holding stories just like hers. She spent quiet days walking familiar streets, closing chapters in her mind that had been left open for too long. The city had taken from her, but it had also given her clarity. Udogwu kept his distance, not out of pride, but respect. When they spoke again, it was calm and honest. There were no promises of fixing the past, only acceptance of it. He apologized without excuses, and Chalugo forgave him without forgetting. They both understood that some bonds are not meant to be lived out loudly. Knowing the truth was enough. Knowing she was never abandoned by accident healed something deep inside her. The people who once circled her with hidden intentions faded away. Without secrets to protect, they had no reason to stay close. The woman from the village who had warned her earlier sent word that it was now safe to return. The city chapter had ended, but it had changed Chalugo forever. She was no longer the girl who arrived with a small bag and big questions. She was a woman who had faced power, fear, and truth, and walked away standing. Before leaving, Chalugo visited one last place where her journey truly began. She stood quietly, reflecting on how far she had come. She realized that searching for her Udogwu was never just about finding a man. It was about finding herself, her voice, and her place in a story that tried to move without her consent. She learned that silence can protect, but it can also wound. And truth, even when painful, brings freedom. When she returned to the village, people noticed the change immediately. She carried herself differently. She spoke with calm confidence. She shared only what needed to be shared, keeping some truths close to her heart. The whispers stopped, replaced by respect. Chalugo became a reminder that leaving home does not mean losing it, and that courage sometimes looks like asking hard questions. The final revelation about another child affected by the past stayed with her. Instead of fear, it gave her purpose. She knew her story could help someone else find theirs. Chalugo chose to live quietly but intentionally. She supported others who felt forgotten, especially young women with dreams bigger than their surroundings. Her experience became wisdom, not bitterness. As the seasons changed, Chalugo often looked toward the road leading out of the village, not with longing but gratitude. The city gave her answers. The journey gave her strength. And the truth gave her peace. Her story ended not with noise or glory, but with understanding. Because some journeys are not meant to make you famous, they are meant to make you whole.